I am going to talk about using digital technology in school examination systems. I work in an organisation called Call Scotland, which is the Scottish National Government funded service for assistive technology in schools. We have a service remit so that we go out to schools and see individual pupils, and we work with children who have got a wide range of difficulties and disabilities, including, for example, visual impairment, dyslexia, dyspraxia, as the previous speaker talked about, learning difficulties, and so a whole range of pupils with different difficulties. We also have a remit to develop and research different projects and then apply them across the whole of the Scottish education system. Now, in Scotland, we have a different education system to the rest of the UK, and we always have done, because we're that kind of independent sort of people. But the examination system, so this is a high-stakes test, they are traditional paper format. So in the majority of the situations, the students will have a paper examination paper, and they will be handwriting their answers in it. Last year, there were 675,361 examinations sat by 132,000 candidates across the country. Now, obviously, if we have a student with a difficulty who may have a problem with the paper, then we may have a situation where the candidate is unable to sit that examination. And so the Scottish Qualifications Authority has access arrangements to enable those candidates to tackle the assessment. And last year, 10.1% of all the candidates in Scotland made use of some sort of assessment arrangement in an examination. On this table, we now go back 10 years to where we started. And so 10 years ago, the most common method of support that was used in an examination was the use of a human being, a human reader, to read the paper to the student. And the next most common was the use of a human scribe to write down their answers. And there are a whole range of other different measures that can be used. And the least common of those is the paper created in Braille. So only 19 requests for a Braille paper out of 41,454. So by far the most common method of support is a human being at that time. And the reason for that, of course, is that the students that need this kind of support are dyslexic, or have got learning difficulties, or are dyspraxic, or have got a handwriting difficulty. There is a very small number of students who have got a significant visual impairment or who are blind. So our brief was to come up with a digital question paper format that would fit into the existing paper-driven processes. And we chose to go for PDF. Now, this morning we heard a lot about the problems of PDF, and they are indeed many, but PDF is actually quite an accessible format for people who can see. It's a terrible format for people who cannot see. But the vast majority of potential users for these exam papers are students who can see. So we went for the PDF format. One of the reasons why is because they are visually identical to the paper copy, and we are dealing with a paper-driven system. With the PDF papers, you can have the text read out to you. So if you're dyslexic or you have a mild visual impairment, then it's possible to access the papers. You can use on-screen drawing tools to tackle papers that might require some drawing. And we added answer boxes so that students can type their answers on screen. So although PDF is not what we think of an accessible format, you can zoom in, you can reflow the papers, you can change the background colors for someone who has a color preference, and you can navigate with mouse and keyboard for someone who has got a physical difficulty. When it comes to writing your answers, the Scottish Qualifications Authority added simple answer boxes, form fields, on top of the PDF. And so students with a handwriting difficulty or dyspraxia can type or they can use speech recognition, or they can use, in this case, an on-screen keyboard. So this is somebody who would have a difficulty with the physical keyboard. Now, one of the problems that we had was that when we started, the quality of the voices that we had available was relatively poor. So in 2005, 6, 7, you were basically limited to American-sounding voices, Microsoft, Sam, Mike, or Mary, or if you spent a lot of money, you could get yourself a very nice British English voice. And one of the comments with our initial trials was that the quality of the synthetic speech was hard to understand. So because of that, we first of all licensed a Scottish computer voice called Heather for the whole of the Scottish public sector. And then in 2011, we got more funding to develop a brother for Heather, Stuart. And these are now licensed for the whole of the Scottish public sector. So today, if you went into any school in Scotland, I would hope that if you opened up any computer, you would be able to have a free text reading program, and you would have 2 high-quality Scottish voices. And if schools across Scotland had chosen to buy software instead of taking advantage of this free solution, then I calculate it would have cost more than 2.7 million euros. Now, that's not to say, we Scots apparently have got a reputation for being careful with money, and this is not to do with saving money. This is to do with doing a good job and making the tools available to students no matter where they are, because there is no way that every single school in Scotland would be buying this kind of software, but by providing it to them for free, then we have a way in to help the students. So that's another reason why we went for PDF. All schools have got Adobe Reader, and now all schools have got the option of free text reader software, and they have high-quality Scottish computer voices, and they can all get past papers from the SQA website. So what we've done is created a system whereby students can access this material, they can revise for their examinations at home, and it costs the schools nothing, and it costs the students nothing. And if we're aiming to address the needs of a large number of students, potentially 1 in 10 of all students taking an examination, it needs to be cheap, and it needs to be very simple, and it needs to be extremely reliable. Now, that's not to say that these PDF papers meet the needs of everybody, because they absolutely don't, but they do meet the needs of many candidates who have got a difficulty in an examination system. Just for the sake of variety, I will play you a sample of the 2 Scottish voices.
We believe there is a strong cultural and educational imperative for pupils in Scotland to be able to read and listen to Scottish curriculum resources spoken using a Scottish synthetic.
So that's the Heather computer voice, and this is Stuart, the male voice.
We believe there is a strong cultural and educational imperative for pupils in Scotland to be able to read and listen to Scottish curriculum resources spoken using a Scottish synthetic voice.
And as I say, it's a simple thing, but if you can have your exam paper read out to you in a familiar accent, then it makes a huge difference, not only to the students, but also to the acceptability of this kind of technology for schools. So our question for today was, can technology replace human support? And this is a graph which shows us the number of examinations where a human reader was used or a human scribe was used, and the number of exams where the use of ICT was used by students with disabilities or additional support needs. And so in 2008, when the digital papers were first introduced, there were 5,000 examinations where technology was used, whereas there were 15,000 examinations where a scribe was used, and 17,000 examinations where a reader was used. And over the past 6 years, the use of technology has steadily increased. Now, the use of human support has stayed about constant throughout that time. So there's no evidence from this graph that we have actually managed to replace human support with technology. But we know from other data that had these students not been using technology, then they would have been using human support. So we have definitely made progress in this area. So in 2014, last year, the number of readers used in exams was 9,000. That's halved, roughly speaking, from the years previous. And the use of technology has actually overtaken the use of a scribe in an examination. Now, I've said earlier that PDF is a great format for people who can see. It's a terrible format for people who are blind or significantly visually impaired. There are other issues that have come up throughout this time frame. And the most common request is for the use for the exam board to integrate question books and answer papers into the same format. The pronunciation of some of the longer terms is still occasionally problematic. And that's us, even though every year I look at the exam papers and I try and find terms which are not correctly spoken, and then the company that creates the computer voice makes a new version which is more accurate. We are still dealing with a paper process, so incredibly enough, you might not believe this, but once the student has finished typing in their paper, it will be printed out and sent off to be marked along with all the other handwritten scripts. It's a mad system, but that's where we are at the moment. It's still dealing with technology, so you still have problems with computers crashing. And there's still not an effective way of dealing with maths and science. Now, one of the advantages of this PDF format as well is that we've saved, I think, a great deal of money. So I have got a back of the envelope calculation, and I would estimate that in last year we spent over 1 million euros paying staff to read and scribe in examinations. And I emphasize that I'm not here to be a mean, thrifty Scot, but in times of recession, we've got to think about how we actually spend our money. And paying people to read to students and write for them in an exam doesn't strike me as a very effective way of spending our money. But more importantly, the students that use the technology are happier and more confident and more independent than they are when they are using a human being to support them in an examination. So the conclusions. Digital question papers, they're accessible for many candidates, not all candidates, and they're usable in many subjects, but not all subjects. So it's another option. They are low cost to produce and use. It's a reliable, familiar, and secure platform. You can use PDFs on a wide variety of different tools, tablet computers, ordinary computers, and it's a pragmatic solution to providing to tackling this particular problem. And I think it's a good solution for existing paper-based assessment systems. These are digital versions of paper exams. They're not designed to be done on computer, but they do provide a viable alternative to humans, readers, and scribes. And I think we've got the evidence to show that. Thank you.